Welcome to Talk Heathen, the show where we take your calls and questions, whether you're deep in the pews or halfway out the door. I'm Christy Powell, American-born and evangelical raised, and today I'm excited to explore the outsider perspective of my new friend Jon the Skeptick. There's a weirdly intense relationship America has with religion, especially compared to other Western nations. In much of Europe and the Western world, religion tends to fade quietly into the background, more cultural artifact than daily compass. Meanwhile, here in the States, religion isn't just a private belief, it's a political platform, a moral identity, and a tribal litmus test. It shows up in our pledges, on our money, and in our laws. It tells adults who they can marry, and here in Texas, it now tells our kids what they can learn. And if you've left religion, you've probably felt how isolating that can be. Because here, not believing, let alone objecting to religion, isn't just odd, it's suspicious. Like, what do you mean you don't go to church? How do you even know what's right or wrong? Look at the trees. In other countries, being non-religious is becoming increasingly normal. But in America, even ask these questions can still feel pretty rebellious. So today, as we open up the lines and we dig into the tough stuff, maybe a little theology, maybe a little trauma, I just want to acknowledge that if you're here, if you're questioning, if you're working through what you were taught to believe, you are not alone. You are not broken. You are not a danger to society. You're doing something brave and deeply human, and we're glad you're here. So let's talk about it. This is Talk Heathen. The lines are open, and the show is coming right now. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Today is July 20th, 2025. I'm your host, Christy Powell, and joining me today for the first time is Jon the Skeptick. Glad to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here. I have been watching Talk Heathen for the longest time, so I'm so excited to finally be on the screen.
Yeah, beautiful. We're gonna get into it. You're certainly not the only person who has sat in that chair with a accent similar to this one, but I'll be excited to hear your kind of take, your experiences of America as something of an outsider.
I'm very excited to share it.
Well, of course, on Talk Heathen, we are open to all of your questions about religion, secular humanism, atheistic morality, cosmology, philosophy, science, history, life, the universe, and everything. But Jon, who are you hoping to talk to today?
I would really like to be told how I'm wrong. So I'd love to hear, why there's a God, why I've got it completely wrong. That's what I'm most excited for.
Beautiful. Well, Talk Heathen is a production of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. We are a live call-in show. We have open lines. So get your calls in at 512-991-9242 or from your computer at tiny.cc/callth. And while we wait for a few more of those calls to roll in, let's jump into the question of the week segment. We've got Richard on deck. Richard, what do you have for us this week?
Hello, yes, it is indeed time for our Talk Heathen To Me segment, where we get into the questions of the week. And last week we asked you, what would Jesus' drag name be? And here are our top 3 answers. Number 3 from Colin Mars. Jesus' drag name, Bia Attitude.
I like that, but I want like a very Golden Girls type burlesque costume.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I can see that apartment filled with Jesus in drag clothes and having those comedy moments. That
very like Easter's Protestant aesthetic. Sorry, keep going.
No, Christy, I think you've hit on something. I think there's money to be made. Number 2, Chuck Gaydos says Jesus' drag name, Lots of Loves.
That's good.
Oh, wow. Chuck Gaydos, I don't know whether to cancel you for that or not. Number 1 is Metalmatic84, who says his drag name should be Jesus.
Jesus Christ. I like it.
I'm going to use that from now on.
That is great. Yeah, great answers all. And of course, the prompt for next week is name a creepy Bible verse. So I'm not going to let you two get away without doing this. As always, you're getting put on the spot. Jon looked really, really scared then, so I'll give you a moment to think about it and jump to Christy first.
Yeah, creepy can go so many different directions, but Genesis 6:4, where it says, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. I kind of like that verse is so isolated, even in context, with no real explanation. It's one of those like short one-sentence horror stories, because I have no idea what it means, but I'm grossed out by it.
It's almost as if the Bible was amalgamated from lots of different tribal regions with different snippets of different stories, isn't it?
That bit does read a little like Greek mythology. I don't know the full history of exactly when it got inserted or how old those records are, but it's worth considering.
Jon, your answer, please, if you will, good sir.
I mean, I'm trained in theatre, so I would have much preferred to have had the drag queen one, which I would have gone for that. I would have gone Bertha Cross. But anyway, whatever. We're on this week, and I as a non-reader of the Bible, because I grew up non-religious, I did have to do a little bit of searching. Leviticus 18:7. And I don't know it word for word, but it's something about not dishonoring your father by having sex with your mother. Creepy.
Sounds like a good rule. Yeah.
Creepy, yeah. How that's even part of the conversation.
What happened that they needed to make a rule? It's good that there's a rule now.
It's weird. It's weird and creepy.
It's weird and creepy, and yet in the pantheon of gods, El, who was the father god, was Yahweh's father. And when El passed away, he actually, Yahweh inherited his father's wife to become his own wife. So that was a thing. That's not taught in Bible class. I don't know why that is. It's really strange.
There's lots that they just leave out, isn't there? There's tons.
Right. Have a great show, guys. I'm jumping out of here. Everybody put your stuff in the answers next week in the... stuff below, you know what I'm talking about, because I don't, and I'm going. Bye.
Cool. Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for being here and backing us up. I want to thank the rest of our crew and everybody else who has helped to make these productions possible. Maybe we'll even get a shot of a crew cat. There's one. Thank you, good folks, for all of your hard work, for getting up with us this early this morning. All right. Well, with that, I think we are ready to jump on the lines and talk to our first caller, Benji in Alabama.
Yeah.
Benji, what can we do for you today?
Hey, so I was going to call as basically the point of view of God to make arguments for God.
All right.
Just for the heck of it, pretty much.
Well, a little theatricism, fine, but let's get to the meat of it. What can you say in God's defense and your own defense?
Well, why do you think God would reveal himself in the first place?
Because he said that he loved me and he wants to save me from sin and eternal damnation.
Well, God created evil, created hell, and everything else. So what makes you think that he would want to save you? What if
he told me, if I'm to take his Bible at its word, he said that he wanted to.
Right.
But good to know that he invented evil. That simplifies a lot of the issues I might have had with trying to understand him.
Okay, but half the Bible is missing because the human ways threw it out and burned it. So how do you
know that? Which if there's parts that are missing that you know about, which parts are they, and how do you know that they're missing?
Book of Mary, Book of Enoch, the canonical Gospels, the Old Testament.
If you know about them, they're not missing, right?
They labeled heresy. Well, no. They burned them. Some of it survived, but a lot of it still got burned by the Roman Catholic Church whenever they took over and made Christianity the national religion of Rome.
Yeah, why didn't you stop them with your all-powerfulness and or stop any of the other awful things that humans might do?
We will. What would the point of free will be if God was to intervene on everything and everyone would just become robots? And
that's a whole new level of.
What's to say that? What's to say if God did reveal himself to people, some people would rebel. His only option might be to destroy the world again, destroy all of the human race and start over.
How can you be all powerful and feel as if your only option is to destroy the world that you yourself love?
Well, I mean, to God's credit, I mean, you do realize that he's destroyed the world multiple times and started over multiple times, right?
I mean, I realize that in the sense that that's the lore. I don't realize that he is real or that he exists. But yeah, sure, I'll play along. The God destroyed the world after creating it on multiple occasions in multiple ways, whether we mean like completely reinvented the earth or just wiped it free of humans is not super relevant to me here. I'm just trying to wrap my head around how you can say that you love me and that you want me to spend eternity with you, but also you're totally cool with absolutely genociding me and everyone I know.
Well, there's a balance there. It's not just one or the other. It's not black and white. So in one sense, God allows you to have free will so you can make the choices that affect the world around you. One choice.
But I'm going to just interject there, Benji. I'm sorry, because that's. I mean, I just need to interject very quickly. If the God is giving you free will and giving you the choice to discern whether or not it exists, it then shouldn't be allowed to get annoyed at the fact that you've decided something when it gave you the option to. It doesn't sound like a very pleasant being. Or if you are the God in this situation, you don't sound like a very pleasant being.
Well, I mean, God slaughtered babies and Amalekites and everyone else because they didn't worship him. He's known as the jealous one and the jealous God.
Is that a being that we should? I'm sorry to talk over you, Benji, but like you're saying lots of stuff, and I just want to like make sure we're all on the same page. You're saying that this God kills babies. Great, well, not great, but you know what I mean. Is that a being that we should worship? A being that just willy-nilly kills people for not accepting that it's real. Is that a being we should worship?
The Christians would argue that the people that he slaughtered deserve to be slaughtered. I don't think that. But I also think that God is beyond human comprehension anyway. So, I mean,
but you're comprehending it. You can't say that.
You're speaking on his behalf.
Yeah, you can't say that you can't comprehend it, but then you're saying that this is a real thing and this is why it does these things. You are, by definition, comprehending it. So how is something that is incomprehensible being comprehended by you?
I can't really tell you that.
Okay. Well, that's very honest of you.
Well, thank you. The problem with the whole God problem in general, worshiping, acknowledging, being subservient to God, a lot of people, because y'all compare that to slavery, right? If I stood before you and I was God and I demanded you to kneel and bow to me and worship me and all this stuff, what argument would you have against that? If I wasn't causing you harm, what argument would you have to say?
That sounds pretty harmful to me. Like, drop what you're doing, give up your life, give up your values, give up your passions, your interests, your own like sustenance, and work towards your own well-being and obey everything that I say. Doesn't sound like it doesn't cause harm.
Well, it doesn't cause physical harm. I mean, if you're the only way that it would affect you is if you're against God. Like if I was God,
right, so I'm only going to shoot you if you don't obey me, but I haven't caused you any physical harm because I haven't actually shot you. And if I do shoot you, it's because you disobeyed me and made the choice that I would shoot you.
And then there's also the whole mental level as well, that if you don't obey me, I'm now worried that I'm going to be shot by you. I have to do this. So mentally, my brain is going all over the place, and I have to worship you, or else I'm going to be hurt. Yes, physical hurt isn't happening, but mentally, that's a lot.
Well, see, what it would be is actually I haven't shot you yet, and you have the choice to either obey me or not. But if you don't obey me, then I have no other choice but to shoot you. Is what that would be.
No, that's wrong. You have plenty of other options. Shooting isn't the only other option.
Yeah, Benji, I don't mean to pry into your personal life, but have you made it this far in life without the wanton murder of another human being?
Well,
you don't have to answer that, but even if you have murdered somebody, let me say that you have not damned them to eternal pain and suffering and torment. So I'm comfortable making the argument that you are more moral than the God that we're here to speak about.
Well, see, hell actually is not because the hell idea that y'all are talking about came from the Devil's Inferno, the Italian guy's book, The Devil Inferno. That hell actually was not the hell that the original Bible had. In the Hebrew and in the Greek, you had Tartarus and you had limbo. And basically that hell was just basically a waiting room. I mean, you die, you walk around, you can still see earth, but you're dead. And
yeah, I mean, we can explore different formulations of the lore. I don't mean to be prescriptive about what is and is not canon within the Christian belief system. Of course, there are many forms of the Christian belief system. But regardless of how we bounce back and forth on some of these specifics, I'm still struggling to understand why there would be a God, why that God could claim to be all loving and all powerful, but also be willing to commit genocide, or in your words, maybe more obligated to commit genocide.
God didn't claim to be all loving. So I'm actually going to point that out, Will Trick. God is not all loving, and he never claimed to be all loving. Now, if you say that...
Okay, so that's more like Bible mistranslations, misinterpretations, BS.
In the Old Testament, basically, so the church created the Trinity, and they said that Jesus and God and the Holy Spirit are all the same. But they can't be all the same, because God in the Old Testament slaughtered and murdered and genocide and all of that. And when Jesus came, he was like, oh, well, turn the other cheek and all this other stuff. Now, later he said when he comes back, he's going to bring a sword to punish those. But when he was here on earth, before they slaughtered him, before the human race killed him, he said that, turn the other cheek and forgive and all that. The God of the Old Testament, according to the Tanakh and the other books, the God does not change. He doesn't change his mind. He does change his mind. Let me correct that. He is jealous. He does change his mind. He does regret change. He regretted making humans when he did it at one point, flooded the earth.
Yeah, I mean, so let me kind of bump in, because I feel like I get what you're expressing, that there are these like different aspects of the lore, these different ways of interpreting it, different historical interpretations, different reasons to believe that this is the real God and that is not the real God. But whether you're quoting Gold Age or Silver Age mythology, I still don't believe in Superman. Like, Benji, why should I believe that you have a real line here, a true understanding of which parts of the Bible are real and which ones are made up?
Well, I'm actually quoting Bronze and Silver Age and a little bit of the age of the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is actually one of the original stories of the flood, and it was just copied. And I mean, the stories of the global flood go back ages before the Bible was ever even written. But the reason why I know is because it's hard to explain, but I think that the reason the human race believes in gods and religions and all this stuff is because it gives them comfort. And they fear what they don't understand. They judge what they don't understand. They would rather believe in an afterlife than think that once they're dead and they lose everything and they turn back to dust. So in my mind, I think that on one hand, it is better to believe because it gives people comfort. On the other hand, believing too much or believing the wrong stuff can be harmful for the human race and society. It can cause harm to others. It can cause people to do extreme, vengeful, angry, trick to judgment things.
Yeah, so let me ask you one final question from me, myself, Benji, and then I think I may be ready to move on, which is just, how do you choose? How do you know what to believe? And does it matter if what you're believing is true or not?
I know what to believe because knowledge was given to me. As far as if it's true or not, I believe that it's true unless it's proven false. Or if I could prove it false. So, I mean, like, for example, I can look outside right now and look at the sky and I see a blue sky. Now, technically it's clear, but you get the metaphor. Sure, unless I can see that it's not actually a blue sky, I'm going to keep thinking that it's a blue sky because that's what I see. That's what the color reflects in the atmosphere is blue. All the other blue is absorbed in the atmosphere and all the other colors pass through. So until the sky changes colors, which I don't think that would be a very good sign either, I'm going to continue to say that the sky is blue. And
okay, so knowledge was given to you, and until new knowledge is given to you, you're going to hold on to the knowledge that was given to you. We should all be so lucky. I certainly work to learn in a number of ways and to challenge, and I'm joined by somebody who professes himself to be a skeptic, and knowledge doesn't tend to just be handed down to us in these same ways. But I appreciate your interest in all of this stuff, and at least a willingness to kind of pick things apart. Jon, anything else that you wanted to touch on?
I just want to say thank you for being honest, Benji. And it is difficult for a lot of folks to say that I believe in this because it's mostly for comfort. And I know I've got family members or my wife's family who are the same when it comes to talking about how and why they believe. It's more for comfort. I don't know if you should be focusing on believing X until X is proven not to be true. There are other ways to discern truth, and finding that it's provable to not be true is probably not the best route to go. I take the stance, and this might not work for you because it's not a very comforting thing, but I take the stance of I won't accept X until it has been demonstrated to be true. And in this instance, X is God, and I can't accept that there is a God until it has been demonstrated to me that there is a God, and be it of any religion out there. But I do really appreciate your sharing of I mostly believe because it's comfortable and it's a comfort for me. So that was very kind of you.
Thank you so much for your call. You have a great afternoon.
I'll forget.
All right. Well, that was a good time. We definitely got to some interesting places already. Right. Before we jump back into the calls, let me ask that we play this video letting folks know about the Bat Cruise.
Hey folks, Jimmy here from the atheist community of Austin, tuning in to let you know what time it is. You already know what time it is. It is time for the annual Bat Cruise. The 2025 Bat Cruise, hosted by the atheist community of Austin, is taking place soon, and time is a ticking. Hey crew, go ahead and throw that slide up for me, please. There it is, Saturday, August 16th, 7 to 9 p.m. Go ahead and get your tickets right now by logging in to tiny.cc/batcruise, or if you're watching me on your computer right now, whip out your phone and scan the QR code. Get your tickets, come hang out with crew members and hosts such as Forrest Valkai, J. Mike, and Dr. Ben, Objectively Dan, Christy Powell. The list goes on. So go grab your friend, grab your partner, or just come alone and get some tickets to come join us and hang out on Lady Bird Lake as we watch the bats and celebrate into the night. We're looking forward to seeing you there. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a good time, and we're going to have a good group of people on the shows the next day. So I hope everybody who can participate will be there. Jon, I kind of mentioned it at the top of the show. I poked fun at your accent just a little bit, but so tell us about your transatlanticanness. Like, what is your relationship with American culture? What's that look like?
I wasn't expecting it to be quite so religious. You hear stories, I grew up in the UK and I lived there for 37 years, and moved here 4 years ago, and was smacked in the face by just how religious it is. And it's not just like on the back of license plates, you say, in God we trust, and on the money and all this stuff. There are literal billboards everywhere telling you that Jesus loves you even though everyone else hates you, and ridiculous stuff like that. I was not prepared for how deep the religion is. And I live in what is termed the South, even though it's very much the middle of the America, but they call themselves Southerners here, in Kentucky. And it's very, like, everywhere you go, God loves you. Big signs. You are a child of God, and we don't believe in abortion, and all this, stuff like this. And that would not happen in the UK. So it was a big smack to the face.
Hey folks, Jimmy here from the atheist community.
What happened there?
Glad we got that sorted. I absolutely believe it. I'm always curious, honestly, even just traveling across the country, how much deeper it can really get than the areas that I grew up that I felt were pretty, deeply saturated in religious thought. But I don't know, how do you see it showing up in not just, I guess, like billboards and local media, but day-to-day life? Are there meaningful changes in, like, blue laws, for instance, or, other kind of restrictions imposed by religion?
I mean, yes, it's difficult to even be in public school education. I've got an 11-year-old stepchild, and religion is almost taking over in state-funded schools as well. It's just booming everywhere. We had to have, my wife and I went into a parent-teacher conference, and it was supposed to be 15 minutes long, but it ended up being an hour and a half, because my stepdaughter complained about a teacher forcing religious belief in class, talking about how there are only two genders, and how God loves you, and you're going to be blessed today, and the teacher's walking around in t-shirts that say Jesus loves you and we're blessed, and all this stuff. It is taking over in the places it shouldn't be, and it is very difficult to deal with as a non-religious person and a non-religious family.
Yeah, no, thankfully, we haven't had to deal with anything quite that overt in the schooling for our high schooler. But man, it does feel like, with the new law about the 10 Commandments being posted, for instance, that on an institutional level, it's becoming more and more acceptable for it to be just everywhere.
It's terrifying, and I almost feel powerless as to how we can stop this happening, because we're just, a small fish in a very large pond. What do we do? How can we stop this? And that's the constant struggle every day. And my wife and I are constantly having conversations on, well, what do we do today? What's going to happen today? How are we going to deal with this? Because it is almost, a weekly thing that something happens. Kids bullying my stepdaughter for not believing in God, and they're 11-year-olds. And that is normalized. The kids at 11 are saying you should believe in a God. Why is that the normal stance?
Yeah, my heart goes out also for these 11-year-olds who may be hearing that if your child goes to hell, it is their fault, and that they will spend eternity, even when they make it into heaven, having that regret, having that on their conscience.
Right, and the parents aren't stopping it. They're going to be hearing it. Kids mirror what their parents do. They hear something, and so that becomes the norm. And so they must also be hearing that their parents talking about, oh, this person from work doesn't believe in a God, so I told him. And so this kid's probably listening to that, going, oh, this is what I should be doing to help people understand that there is an incomprehensible God out there. Just going back to Benji there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so it feels like every couple of months I'll see some kind of new headline about statistical surveys and sort of trend lines for religious attitude.
Right.
Putting the numbers aside, what do you see sort of shifting in the culture wars, maybe here in the States versus elsewhere?
If the rest of the world can continue on its trend of stepping away from religion, it was only a couple of years ago that the UK was dubbed 50% or over 50% non-believer now. If that continues to happen outside of what seems to be a growing religious USA, I think that folks will start to see that actually maybe there's something in this and we shouldn't be accepting that X God is the one true God. I am, though, for the next few years, just given how the world is at the moment, it's a hard place to live in at the moment. I do see it trending downwards away from us as non-believers, and I do see it getting harder to be a non-believer in the next few years, which is absolutely terrifying, especially when you're an immigrant that doesn't believe, and things are happening where immigrants that are not as welcome as they used to be. It's truly a terrifying moment, and I hope that I'm wrong, but I do see it continuing to be a negative trend.
Yeah, no, I hate to be any kind of fearmonger, and I'm not going to quote any statistics or be able to really prove that things are getting worse. Maybe I'm just getting older and grumpier. But I know that when I started up with the ACA some 7 years ago, it's not as if I felt like, well, this hundreds, perhaps thousands year battle is over. Like we're practically mopping it up now. But it has felt a lot scarier to be out on the internet doing this kind of stuff. It has gotten a little bit trickier or more contentious in a lot of ways, and it does feel like we're losing ground in a lot of places.
I think, though, we are in a fortunate position of being brave enough to say, I'm okay with being a non-believer, and maybe giving others that confidence to start speaking up and saying, do you know what, maybe I don't too. I've got friends that I made since moving to the USA who found out that I was non-religious and then kind of clung on to me as like, oh, you also don't believe this? We have no one to talk to about this. So, sure. Becoming almost a person to go to for folks who have non-belief. So I do think that we're lucky that we do this and we talk about being non-believers, and then that hopefully will help others step away from it or confirm that they're stepping away from it outwards, because it's never good to hold on to these things. It is always good to talk to other folks who are in the same boat as you, just to get an understanding and feel like that the feeling of loneliness is the worst. And if you can get rid of that, then, speak to folks like us who will just go, you know what, I understand where you're coming from. I've been there. And let's do all we can to stop it from negatively trending that you are the outcast for not accepting gods and God.
Right. And very much by design. Like, we don't have to bust into a crash course on religious trauma, but I do want to suggest that so much of religious messaging is about the idea of don't question it. Don't think about it. If you start to feel those kinds of doubts, shut it down. And worst of all, don't ever talk to anybody about it. Better a millstone tied around your neck than that you would make somebody else stumble by bringing up these kinds of doubts and these kinds of questions. If you are at all feeling those kinds of considerations, you don't have to believe what I believe or agree with what I say, but please don't sit alone in the pain and suffering of that doubt.
Right. Yeah, it's like I say, it's gonna get harder before it gets easier.
Sure.
Around here, there are places around the world where it is a lot easier to be a non-believer, but it's not easy to get to those places. So we just have to make do with what we got here.
Yeah, well, so to that end, just having something of one man's but an outsider's perspective, is there anything that you feel like both American atheists and maybe Christians alike should understand about our own culture or how it contrasts with the world around us?
I feel like there's not enough conversation about how regular non-believers are. And I do feel like Christians will see, oh, you're a non-believer, can't talk to you. And there just needs to be more of a dialogue between everyone. My mother-in-law absolutely hates that I'm such a nice person and will regularly tell her friends, because they know that I'm a non-believer, will say, how do you deal with that? Well, he's just such a nice person. I feel like if there's, and I hate that, but if there's more of that, and folks can see that we're not these baby-eating, Satan-worshipping folks. We're just regular people. I mow my lawn every month when I should do it a lot more, just like everyone else. You know, I am allergic to soy too. You know, I'm just a regular person that doesn't believe in X. And if there was more of that conversation, rather than the whole angry atheist stereotype that is constant, I feel like there would be a better understanding and things would start to progress a lot easier, you know?
Yeah, I hear that. And, you know, I don't want to gaze at our own navels for too long, but I don't know. How do you feel about the work that you and I and all of the other people that we've seen on screen today are doing to combat that? Because I am an atheist. A lot of the questions we get on this show do make me angry. I do express that. I try to greet people with understanding and compassion, but here we are on YouTube. You know, we're out doing this out on the internet where everything turns ragey and, you know, clickbaity and all of those kinds of considerations. So how do folks like you and I do this while modeling that notion that we don't eat babies, that we're not, you know, frustrated assholes who just want to shove a syllogism down your throat?
We all know what the internet is, and we know how people use the internet, and the internet is an outlet for that. I need to vent right now, and this is how I'm going to do it. But I feel like the real life side of us is the calmer side. If you meet me, I'm a 6'2" teddy bear that loves a hug, and even if like we're going to disagree on some things, we're going to hug it out. The online, especially the skeptic side of me, can get a little bit snippy at times because I just get frustrated. But Jon in real life is not like that most of the time. Occasionally it will come out, and I do feel like we have that power to be, you know, let's have a calm conversation. I've seen some things happening down in Tennessee with some friends of ours. Secular Rarity, he does this a lot. Will host evenings where atheists and Christians just hang out and have discussions, and I think that's kind of what needs to happen more. When we're hidden behind a screen, it's very easy to go, I hate everything, and this is why you're wrong and you're stupid and blah blah blah. But in person, you're not going to do that, because you know we do have empathy, and when you see a person there, you will see their emotion, you'll see their reaction, and tailor your conversation towards it. And I guess as a therapist, you might see that anyway.
Yeah, no question. I mean, I definitely have these experiences of people looking at religion from all different directions and trying to figure out what it means to them and whether or not it's even important that their religion be true. You know, I do appreciate when folks like Benji are able to just acknowledge out loud that, at least for a lot of folks, the truth question is not an important one, and that if it makes me feel better, makes my life feel better, then go for it. And, you know, I definitely want to be mindful about chastising such folks. I know that there are irrational beliefs that I hold on to because they make me feel better. I have a quote unquote smart scale that tells me that I have the body of a man 5 years younger than me. Do I actually believe that that's good science, or that I should put any stock in that at all? Absolutely not. Does it make me feel good? And am I willing to believe it? Even if there might be some negative consequences to living as if that was true? You know, I'm not here to cast stones is all I'm trying to say. But, you know, I do hope that people embrace some amount of skepticism, Jon.
Right. I agree. And I came up as a non-believer. I grew up as a non-believer, but I did hold on to afterlife belief because it gave me that comfort. So I can completely empathize and understand why someone like Benji would say, you know, this is a comfort thing for me. I spent a lot of my life talking to my dead relatives because that's what spiritualists do. They talk to the dead, or at least I thought I did, and that offered me some kind of comfort. So I completely get it. I understand, but having a spiritualist belief in the UK, I wouldn't then tell other people that they should also have that same belief. And that's the difference. That's where we are. I used to believe that the dead were standing around and watching me whilst I was using the toilet and everything. You know, they were in the room the whole time, but I would never want anybody else to feel like that. And that's the difference as well with them, especially the UK and the USA, is belief is very private over there. A lot of my friends wouldn't have even have known that I would believe that unless it came up in conversation. Whereas here, if, like you said earlier, if you don't believe these things, you are looked down on as the outcast, the outsider, for not accepting the spiritualists, the spiritual side of things. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's a lot of value in just changing your Windows view so that you can have a new perspective on some of these things. Like we talked before the show about how I've spent the overwhelming majority of my life in a rather small segment of the world that is deeply saturated in evangelical beliefs. And, you know, growing up as a conservative Christian in that rural Texas environment, I was kind of shocked to hear that others consider a Texas liberal to be more of like an American moderate and really more of like a European conservative. I guess I'm curious about your experiences of living halfway around the world and how that can kind of, I don't know, not necessarily teach you anything, but give you a opportunity to challenge assumptions that just seem like so under your radar or so obvious in some ways.
My wife, before I moved here, she referred to me, but only because I had voted once for the UK Conservative Party. She called me a British conservative. When people heard that around here, especially liberal people, they heard, oh dear, what is Jon going to be like? But it's completely different. A conservative person over there, and I'm not talking now politics, but it's more... they are just okay with everything, really are okay. I would say I am more of a liberal, a British liberal, where I am, you know, I accept people and love people, and I want the best for people. And regardless of what religion is forcing down our throats, I want the best for the people. It was very difficult coming in and going, oh, there's very much a divide here on the left and the right, and it's almost polar opposite. There's no middle ground really for a stance in this country. It is, you are this or you are this, and it's very difficult to navigate as an outsider. Whereas in the UK, it's a much broader, like there's more of a blurring between the lines, and folks are a lot more accepting of everything, or at least it seems that way.
Yeah, and again, whether any individual chooses to adopt the thought processes, the culture, the religious beliefs, the political leanings, or whatever of the culture around them, I hope that people just have opportunities to experience a different point of view so that they can begin to acknowledge some of the assumptions that they carry about the world around them, about what is obviously true, only obvious because it's true for practically every person you've ever hung out with.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely taken some getting used to being over here. That's for sure.
Sure.
It's been a lot. I mean, and I've spoken about this on other places, but I've even lost work because of my polar opposite to the majority in this country. So yeah, it's been rough. It's been a rough ride, but
no, I believe it. So long as we're talking about these transatlantic differences, let me actually see if I can get Richard back into the room with us and hear a little bit about his point of view on, I don't know, am I crazy for bringing up the weirdness of American relationship with religion?
I don't know. I think I've not witnessed it firsthand in America, so I can't speak from that perspective. You two are both better position to do that.
I mean, you can tell me, is it weird to have billboards supporting religious values at every mile marker? Because I grew up thinking that was normal. Is that you don't do that there?
You wouldn't get that here. It's weird here. Religion is much more understated, but I don't think it's any less aggressive. I just think it's done in a different way. I've certainly
more
met
polite,
evangelical,
more British.
Not necessarily. I've certainly met evangelical Christians and Muslims and even Hindus who've been stood in the street, kind of shouting at people that you should essentially come to them, and some of them with the same kind of furor and threat, like underhand threats I see made in the US online. I certainly think it's far less common here, but it certainly exists. And I have seen billboards on the side of buses occasionally and things with advertisements for churches and things on. It does happen. It's just at much, much, much smaller scale.
That must be a north-south divide, though, because you're in the north of the UK, right? Yeah. And so I grew up in the south of England, and I never remember seeing anything like that.
Yeah, it certainly happens. I think I spend a lot of time in Scotland as well, and I think in Scotland I see it much more than I do in the area I live in England. So I think it depends on the area, right. But it's certainly, I don't think it's to the extent that you have over in the US by any stretch of the imagination, but it does occur, and it's. I think there are subtle differences as well. People are more likely to be called out on it here. Especially in certain areas, and I'm not going to name any particular area. If religious people were in the street, kind of shouting at non-religious people, a headbutt would be the response without any shadow of a doubt. So it's.
Bullhorn preachers aren't part of the culture.
I mean, down in London, they have street preachers. They have Speaker's Corner, and people get up and on there and do their thing and expect responses. Myself and Jamie the Blind Limey, when he visited just before Christmas, we bumped into a bunch of Jehovah's Witnesses, and they're not allowed now to approach people, and I think they've got some internal rules since the dreaded lurg that stops them actually approaching people. But me and Jimmy went and had a conversation, and very pleasant conversation it was with them. So there were certainly people out there spreading the message. It's not to the extent of the US because it's not as ingrained as in the culture of the US. Outwardly religious people outside of kind of the professional stuff I do, I know very few outwardly religious people who would go and start talking to the work colleagues, people who, if they found out the work colleagues were atheists, would start saying, well, you shouldn't really, you should. Outside of possibly the only time I've ever experienced that is probably with a few Muslims. But it happens, but it's a much smaller scale.
I think that's the same for me as well. I out of my friendship circle back in the UK, I can think of maybe one person that was religious. And so now it's the complete opposite. I went to a wedding a couple of weeks ago, and I was maybe one of 2 or 3 non-believers in a wedding of over 100 people. It is complete opposite. Yeah, and it's very difficult to navigate.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had like a proper coworker in 7 or 8 years now, but even when I was working at a psychiatric hospital, ostensibly a bastion of science and some of these things, I was aware of the religious beliefs of most of my coworkers, and it was pretty worn on the sleeve. There wasn't like intense arguments at every staff meeting, but there was some glances around the room on certain, hot button culture worry type conversations. And there was a certain understanding that you can't talk about X in front of, person A.
What's the difference kind of interstate wise? Is Texas a lot different to Tennessee? Are they kind of one and the same? Do they differ from
Texas
the big
and Tennessee
city
are going to
states?
be much more similar to each other than I think most other states in the nation, because there is something to be said about the sort of Southeast being the Bible Belt, however you want to frame it, or just a center for strong religious belief. Certainly not the only one.
Right. And I went to the very first state I visited in the USA before I moved here was California. And I don't remember seeing any billboards for gods there. I then went to New York a few years later. Again, no billboards. Pennsylvania, didn't see any. I went close to the New York border, didn't see any. The second I got to Kentucky, Oh my word.
Sure. And pretty much every mile of road between here and Kentucky, all the way down to Florida, North Carolina, like that span.
Yeah. And I've driven through quite a few, Virginia, West Virginia, North and South Carolina, all the same. You see a lot of these billboards. Georgia, Tennessee, yeah. A bit of Ohio, yes. But then those other sort of almost more touristy states didn't seem to be as ingrained.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, maybe that is a sort of cleaning it up for the tourists kind of idea. And I don't mean to get too carried away with this, but I am interested to hear from y'all, not just how do we describe different parts of the world, but what insights can we really gain from seeing them, or from just recognizing how our corner of the universe may have certain assumptions built into it, and that when people are traveling back and forth and you have a lot of outsiders coming into a community, does it isolate it or protected it in any way? Is the spread of information a good way of getting rid of misinformation? I know these are all big questions that I don't mean to totally saddle y'all with, but I'm curious if you have any insights for our American show here in evangelical Texas, Austin.
I do feel like there needs to be more folks like us who react to these in a negative way. The first time I saw a billboard, I laughed out loud, which I know probably wasn't the correct reaction, but I made it easier to deal with for the people that I was with, my wife and some friends. Almost normalizing saying that's ridiculous. I feel like that needs to happen, and if there aren't any of these, big signs across the more touristy states, that's going to make the people that live there, it almost, if out of sight, out of mind. If they're not getting it ingrained all the time, they might slowly start stepping away from it. And I do think that is a case anyway in these more touristy states, and there's more diverse population going through. Folks do step away from the belief. It seems to be small towns in Kentucky and Texas and Tennessee where it's everybody knows everybody else, and they've all
relatively
grown up in
like isolated cultures where there's not an obligation to confront somebody else's potential point of view or belief system.
And that lack of confrontation is almost dangerous, because it's just going to get deeper and deeper and deeper as time goes by.
Yeah, I think it's very important to kind of spread this, get this kind of thing out and have as many of these conversations as possible. It just, obviously my background's in religious studies, and the one thing that is emphasized in religious studies at every level of it is that you don't have, for example, Christianity, or you don't have Islam, or you don't have Buddhism. You have Christianities and Islams and Buddhisms. And the more we can have these conversations, the more we can emphasize that there are kind of geographical differences that move when religion moves through time and place. We can have this kind of wider understanding. Someone might come up. I've met people who've come to Britain on mission, Mormons who've come to Britain on missions, and who've lived 20 miles outside of Nevada, and they've lived in such isolated communities that they didn't even know who Michael Jackson was until they came to Britain. And it's a funny thing to say. It's quite amusing, but it does actually underscore a real problem with some of these communities. When you're that insular and you're that isolated, you haven't had these conversations, and especially when you've not had them and been met with compassion, it's really, really difficult for you to kind of get out of that mindset that this is the truth. Christy was talking about paradigms. This is the truth. This is the only worldview which is true, or the only worldview which is, valuable, or the only worldview which is legitimate. And that's not true. We can disagree, but still have good, compassionate conversations. And most importantly, when we do that, and we share that information, we learn from that. And everybody learns. It's not just one person in the conversation being lectured to, or it shouldn't be one person in the conversation being lectured to. What we should have, and I think we exemplify this on this show, is when we have these conversations, we don't just turn around to people and say, nope, you're wrong. We say, we don't agree with you, we don't believe you, but this is why. And take that walk with the person. And I think that's so vital. And that's not just an atheist versus theist thing. That can be two different sects of Christianity or two different sects of Islam or two different sects of Buddhism. The amount of times, and I've heard more than probably anything else, is secular Buddhists who don't believe in any kind of supernatural element of Buddhism, saying Buddhism is just a philosophy. That's all it is. There is no supernatural. And speaking for everybody. And that's just incorrect.
Right.
And
yeah. Not everybody who calls himself a Buddhist calls Buddhism that way, and not by a long shot. And we have to, make space before hijacking these terms.
Yeah, absolutely. We should have these conversations, not just atheist to believer, but intra-religion as well. And I think that's equally as important.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
Are there any, final thoughts that y'all want to offer about how folks can maybe embrace a more circumspect worldview on their own, or maybe just recognize some of the deeply held assumptions that they have and find space to be curious about, does everybody think that you should do it this way? I mean, should you be putting the butter on the top of the toast and eating it toast side up? Because I got to tell you guys, once I was willing to give it a try, butter side down is best. And if nobody had ever confronted me with that worldview, I would be over here eating my toast like an idiot.
That has changed. If nothing else, that has changed my life, knowing that people do eat their toast butter side down.
Jon, if you can reach just one person.
Right. But we know that happens. And that's why these conversations are important. Yes, we don't want to be harsh about it. And we want to have respectful as much as possible. And I'm sorry to do this, but on another show from the ACA, we did have a breakthrough on a very regular caller to Truth Wanted a couple of weeks ago, who eventually in one episode said that they are now they now identify as atheist. And so it was through years of conversation with this person that he went, do you know what? Actually, I can see what you're saying now. And I guess this is now my position. So that's why these conversations are so important, because even if you can help one person rationalize everything, you've done your thing.
Yeah, and I think it's also important not to kind of, we were talking about kind of different worldviews and things, and I think it's very, very important not to kind of, just say somebody's wrong because of the worldview. I'm writing a book at the moment about skepticism and about critical thinking and epistemology. And one of the first things I say, the very, very first things in that book that I say is that there are lots of different ways of looking at the world, of interpreting the world. They're all legitimate, or most of them are legitimate. You can get some that I think you can probably say on, but even irrational ones are legitimate. And what my intention is with this is to give you my opinion, and hopefully by the end of the book you will agree with me.
Sure, but it's about
because I'm going to walk you through
declaring.
It. Right. But it's not saying that all these other things are illegitimate. You shouldn't hold these views, and if you do, I'm simply going to call you wrong or stupid. Well, that's the last thing I think we need to do. I really, really, really do believe it's the last thing we need to do, that we have to have these conversations, truly believe we have to have these conversations as compassionately as possible. And that does not mean for the person who has been in the chat saying we're nasty and that's why they're not calling in because we bully people. That does not mean that we shouldn't challenge people. That doesn't mean that at all. You should be willing. I want to be challenged. I said in the pre-show TikTok, I was talking about some people who'd called me out on the show in the YouTube comments from last week. And don't do it in the YouTube comments. Don't do it in a place on a video where maybe 50 people are going to see it. Call the show and call me out where everybody can see it. Do it on the platform where you think I have made the mistake, and let's have that conversation. I'm open to being corrected. I think you should be open to being corrected too if I think you're wrong. So let's have the conversation. And what better place to do it on one where thousands of people can hold you accountable?
Yeah, I mean, we hold office hours for an hour and a half every single Sunday on this show alone. So yeah, don't sneak in with an email. Come and talk to us about it.
That's what we're here for.
But I want to have a little bit more fun with you guys before we head out. So I want to play this voicemail that was left here at the Free Thought Library in Austin, Texas. Crew, can you get that fired up for me?
Yeah, I just wanted to pass on that I agree with pretty much everything you're saying, but that's easy. I think religion certainly is man-made. What I would suggest is, I don't know if you've been following it, but look at what's coming up with or coming out with quantum consciousness and how some people think we just live in a giant matrix. So there's some interesting things they're finding out about the brain, and, you know, that may be something. All right, good luck.
We're just leaving it there. That may turn out to be something. I have to say, I always get a little sort of a sick thrill out of the possibility whenever we get a phone call where somebody mentions either the word consciousness or quantum. If you're going to jam them together, I get very excited about where that conversation could go. I'm sorry we had to leave it there.
That was concerning. So I just want to clarify that this person's saying that we might be living in a giant matrix.
I mean, they said that some people say that, which is a thing to bring up. So
I mean, there's lots of things that people say.
People say lots and lots of things.
Yeah.
That was that. I mean, me and Christy are both. That's up both of our alleys. But it's. I just want to. I've just mentioned. The book's not out yet. You can't buy it, so it's not doing anything to our 501c3 thing. However, I do want to mention Franco Vazza, who was a senior researcher at the University of Bologna, and he knows a thing or two about his simulations because he studied the origin of extragalactic magnetic fields and the evolution of cosmic structures using very big numerical simulations. And his findings on the subject are forthright. We showed that this hypothesis is simply incompatible with all we know about physics. And that's what he concluded in his 2025 article, which was published in Frontiers of Physics. The people who are physicists who study this all the time, they are not in agreement with people who like to use the word quantum. I love physics. It's something I study like as an amateur. Don't do it at all from any kind of academic level. I love reading about it. I do study consciousness at an academic level, however, and quantum consciousness is fucking bullshit. If you disagree with me, call the show.
Yeah, no, it makes my consciousness turn into some sort of foam when I start to hear people walk us through all of those arguments. And they seem to mostly be built on saying the word quantum as many times in a sentence as you conceivably can, which of course makes the argument that much more solid.
I might just start adding quantum to everything I say then. If that's what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I'm going to hit some of the super chats that have been rolling in here in just a moment. But before I do, Jon, do you have the top 5 patrons of the week for us?
I was so glad to have been given this. So the top 5 patrons this week. Oops, all singularity. Dingleberry Jackson, these are some great names, Kalevi Helvetti, J.A. Carlton, and Maldred D. Malcontent. And there's an honorable mention. Do I mention the honorable mention?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you have to, because I just want to hear you try and say this word out loud.
Okay, grob.
I don't know what it is. I just like it. I just like it.
That's more like someone like Richard saying grub, right? I'm going to eat my grub.
I'm going for grub. Oh, I don't know why I've just put a Yorkshire accent on when I've got a Yorkshire accent.
You have it already.
Yeah. Well, I do also want to thank the folks who have been donating today through our super chats. We received $10 from Blind Limey, who said, "This week on Heathen Gear, Christy grills everyone. Jon ponders a terrible museum, and Richard tries to make someone swallow a syllogism." Actually, that's the episode I want to see. Yeah, I'm good for that.
Words. He's so good with his words.
Yeah. We had a $5 donation from new member Uncle Freaky, who says, "Christy, there is no such thing as a grumpy old person. We're simply finally decided to be brutally honest." Yeah, you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm not grumpy. I'm just saying it like it is.
Yeah.
I'm just being radically honest.
There's something about hitting your 40s. Your eyes are starting to degrade in a way that you weren't expecting. I've worn glasses my entire life, but now they're doing something else, and I'm just a bit annoyed.
Yeah, your back makes you perpetually honest.
Yeah,
the ongoing minor back pain.
Up. Yeah, getting out of bed is a pain. Out of one of the most comfortable places, I groan and I ache, and it takes me a minute to stand up straight. You know,
yeah. Billy Connolly once said that when you know when you start getting older, because when you start to get out of your chair, you realize you're making noises when you're doing it.
I had a buddy just a couple of years ago look at me and he was like, "Really? It's already started for you? You're gonna make the like grumpy old man noises every time you stand up and sit down? Is that who you want to be?" And now I'm terrified. I just can't even allow myself to make those noises.
I make a conscious effort now. My wife, we have our own little, and it's probably the same in your houses. You have a space that you sit and your partner sits, and I will look over at her and see if she's in the room, you know, not focused on something else, and I'll decide whether or not I'm going to make a sound. If she's not in the room, I think I'm going to be okay to stand up regularly. But if she's aware, I have to physically stop myself from groaning as I stand up.
Just
and that's how we know that you're younger than I am, Jon, because I have no choice. I have to make the noise.
Right, okay.
Oh, wow. So this might be the oldest conversation I've ever participated in. Thank you guys for that. Super glad that it is not only recorded, but broadcasted across the internet. Old man shakes fist at cloud. One more super chat before we start to wrap up today came in from Miranda Rensberger saying, "Interesting things we're finding out about the brains are still interesting things we're finding out about the brains. Brains are real and physical, and we can demonstrate things about them." Fair to say.
Yes.
I love sort of half-baked neuroscience. It makes a wicked part of me start to grin inside when somebody says, like, "Your brain lights up when you blah, 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 blah." And I always know it's going to be good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, so Richard, I appreciate you coming out and joining us for a lot of this conversation.
Thank you for bringing me.
Yeah, was there anything else about the show today that you wanted to make sure to circle or highlight?
I think the first caller is one of those callers who calls us regularly, and the caller is one of those callers who calls us regularly, and is also one of those callers who a lot of people complain about us taking. So I've got two things to say on this, and I think they're both very, very important. The first one is, when we're talking to people like that, it's really, really important, because the more we talk to them, as Jon's just mentioned, we had one on Truth Wanted, who through years and years of these conversations has actually done the work himself after talking to people and being given the opportunity to think about it, who's actually come out of the other side. And he's still on a journey. He still is on a journey, as are we all. And he's come out of the other side, but he's had a fundamental paradigm shift in the way he kind of thinks and what he believes. And that is why we talk to these people. It's really, really important that although it might seem like they're calling in week after week with the same thing or similar things and making no sense, that the more they're having these conversations, the more they're given the opportunity to think about it. I appreciate it might be boring for some people listening to the same stuff over and over, but we are doing it for entertainment, but more importantly, we're doing it to give people scaffolding to kind of think about how they assess things in their lives. Sure. And I think that should always be held in the back of your mind as well.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of this conversation, I don't mean to cut in, but a lot of this conversation today has been about sort of illustrating through the extremes, like just getting a different worldview, a different point of view from seeing, okay, if you take your Christian faith to the like billboard level, this might be what you can expect in terms of quality education and infant mortality and some of these things. I don't mean to force those connections in the last couple of moments of the show, but I do think that even when we don't necessarily hold the exact same belief as somebody like Benji, our reasoning, even if it's a little bit more sophisticated or has slightly better artifice to it, often looks like that. And by seeing a more sort of extreme formulation of it and some of the irrationality of these things, we can begin to recognize those same patterns in ourselves in ways that I think are really productive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also what I also wanted to say on that was, if you are one of those people who complains about these callers, we are volunteers. You know, we give a lot of our times doing this and, you know, trying to get people to call in and whatnot. You can help. If you enjoy watching this show, especially if you're one of those people who dislikes these same callers, share the show where you can on your social media platforms. Share it in real life with religious friends and family and co-workers. Have the conversations. If you have someone in your life who's religious and saying to you, you know, I know you're an atheist, you should believe in God, say, you know, there's a great place you can call and have that conversation. You know, it wouldn't take much if everybody who watched this show had just shared it on the social media, share it on Facebook or on Instagram, wherever it is you go, Blue Sky, or even if you're insane enough to go on X, share it wherever you go. Sure. And like, really, let's just get the word out. And then people will call in. There'll be much more variety of calls. Don't just sit there and say, oh, not Jon again. I'm fed up of listening to his calls, when all you're doing is sitting and grumbling. Just share it on your social media platforms.
Yeah. Well, and call in yourself. And even if we are largely in alignment on a lot of things, you're watching these shows because you largely agree with the host, I'm still very interested to learn about your experiences, what you're maybe still wrapping your head around, what helped you get there, what you perhaps still struggle with. You know, we talked a little bit about the trauma component to some of this at the top of the show. So I'm just always excited to talk to different types of folks and to be doing this every couple of weeks with y'all.
And on the flip side as well, you may get irritated at the same callers calling in all the time, but it is demonstrable now that folks who call in for years at a time do eventually or can eventually go light bulb moment, and you could witness that. You could see someone or hear someone that you've been watching for months, years, go, oh, now I understand where you're coming from. And how incredible would that be? To see another person that you constantly calls into a show go, now I understand. Now I get it.
Yeah. Well, before we head out, I want to remind people again about the Bat Cruise that's coming up. We can get that information back up on your screen one more time so people can lock down what remaining tickets still exist. I believe they're getting very, very thin if they haven't already run out by the time I'm saying this. They may have run out by the time you're hearing this. So please make sure to check it out. But okay, yeah, if we can play. All right, let's go ahead and send out some love rings. Who are y'all wanting to send out some love to today?
Richard, you go first.
I want to send it to the people, to the theists, like the two guys who called last week. One was a regular caller. One was the first time he'd called, a young caller who was just trying to give us his arguments for God for the first time. My love rings will always be for those people who've had the who've seen the show and said, I do want to have these conversations. I'm actually going to take the step and have the conversations. It's not about, and as I've said it all the time, and it does piss a lot of the atheists off who watch, but for me, it's not about saying to somebody, you've got to stop believing in what you believe in. For me, it's about saying, here's this toolkit, here's this scaffolding, so that you can better assess the things that you accept as true. And it's your job to do the work once we've built the scaffolding, but we can build it together. Give us a call and let's do it. And when people take that step and give us those calls, that's all these love rings are for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, I know that this is often framed as a show of atheists debating Christians, and it certainly doesn't only include that. Really, whatever it is your belief system, whether it's atheistic or theistic, let's talk about the how and the why of it. Explain it to me like I'm 5. Like, call into the show just to discuss what you believe, because while I don't need you to believe what I believe, I do believe that if what you believe is something that is intentional, something that is thoughtful, something that you have considered rather than just cut and copied from the mythology of your immediate community, that you will offer greater things to this world. And I want to be a part of all of us giving this world our best.
And I'd like to extend some love rings to those who are still in a position of not being brave enough to say, I don't accept this because of where they are, family wise, they may be shunned. We are here for you, and whilst we can't offer advice, we can offer you an ear and a place of safety, and reach out to anybody who is in the fortunate position of saying, I am a non-believer, because we will be there in whatever way we can for you. So my love rings go out to you.
Yeah. Well said. Jon, glad to have you on the show and to bring you into our Talk Heathen fold. To everybody else out there, I'll say that, if you don't believe, this is your community, and we appreciate you being here. And if you do believe, we definitely don't hate you.
We're just
not convinced.
We want the truth. So watch Truth Wanted live, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central. Call 512-991-9242 or visit tiny.cc/call TW.